My wife said she couldn't walk anymore. Yeah, I was shocked, until I found out it was all an act to keep me trapped in our marriage. Think that's wild? Wait until you hear how I made her get up. But let's start with how I uncovered the truth. Yo, I'm Mark, 28 years old, and let me tell you, my life went from zero to hell in like one night. You ever have one of those days where everything just spirals out of control? Yeah, that was me, except it wasn't just some bad day at work. It was my wife, Julia, pulling the biggest stunt of the century. So picture this. Julia, 27, fit as hell, and just the day before, she was literally bouncing around the house like some hyperactive kid in her favorite Converse sneakers. And then, bam! I wake up, and she's lying there like a rock, all wide-eyed and freaking out. Mark, I can't feel my legs, she whispers like she's in some dramatic soap opera. I thought she hit her head or something. Like, seriously, who just wakes up and decides, I'm paralyzed today, honey? But nah, she's dead serious. Cue panic mode. I'm thinking, is this real? Is this actually happening? I mean, just yesterday we were arguing over what pizza to order, and now I'm supposed to believe she's paralyzed? Of course, I freaked out and called 911, right? Because what the hell else do you do when your wife suddenly says her legs are on vacation without her permission? Ambulance shows up and we rush to the hospital. I'm pacing around like a madman, skipping work like it's nothing, because obviously my wife can't walk. Priorities, right? We're at the hospital all day, and here's where it gets real weird. The doctors are poking and prodding, running tests like they're looking for a needle in a haystack. And guess what? Nada. Zilch. No damage. No nerve problems. It's like they're saying, congrats, dude. Your wife's perfectly fine. She just forgot how to use her legs for fun. And that's when it hit me. Like full-on punch to the brain. Something's off here. I mean, come on, it's not every day your wife wakes up like, surprise, I'm disabled now. But I just couldn't shake that feeling. Something wasn't adding up. So, a whole week goes by, and guess what? Julia's still sprawled out on the bed like she's auditioning for a sad reality show. Every time I so much as suggest she try to stand up, she lets out this dramatic groan like she's a wounded soldier. Like, girl, we're not in a war movie, get up, but nah, she was fully committed to this whole my legs don't work act. It's like her legs decided to take early retirement and she was just rolling with it. Doctors kept pushing for more tests, like they were trying to uncover some deep medical mystery, but surprise, surprise, Julia didn't seem too interested. It's like she found a sweet spot in her little tragedy and was perfectly fine with being carried around like a goddamn princess. I mean, yeah, it was cool for like a day, but after the third time I had to lift her up to get her to the bathroom, I was over it. She'd give me that pitiful look and I'd be like, come on, Julia, just try to move. And she'd sigh dramatically, whispering, I can't, Mark. I just can't. Dude, if I had $1 for every time she said that, I could have paid for her Oscar nomination. It was all starting to grind on me. We'd been on the edge of divorce for a while now. Our marriage was like a ticking time bomb, waiting to blow up in our faces. We fought over everything, from laundry to what show to watch on Netflix. But now, instead of yelling at each other every 5 minutes, I was playing nurse to this sudden disability. And guess what? Julia seemed to love it. She got all cozy in her wheelchair, letting me do everything for her. I became her personal Uber, therapist, and butler, all wrapped into one. You ever try pushing someone in a wheelchair around the house while they watch you like some tragic queen? Yeah, that was my life. But here's the kicker. Every time I was hoisting her around or setting her up in bed, all I could think about was divorce. We had been so close to splitting up, and now I was stuck in this twisted caregiver role. It was like life was trolling me hard. I mean, what was I supposed to do? Just leave her there, unable to walk? The guilt alone was enough to keep me in this freak show. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't stop wondering, was this real? Or was she just playing me? So about a week later, I'm sitting in a bar with my best friend Tom. We're downing beers, and out of nowhere, he hits me with this gem. Dude, are you sure she's not faking it? I almost choked on my drink. What the hell, man? You think she's pulling some kind of stunt? Tom just gives me this smirk, like he's cracked the code to the universe. I'm just saying, bro, I've seen weirder. And let's be real, Julia isn't exactly above some drama. I wanted to call him out, tell him he was talking crazy, but you know that feeling when someone plants a seed in your brain and it just won't stop growing? Yeah, that was me. Tom had straight up put me on high alert, and now every little thing Julia did seemed off. So, naturally, I became a low-key detective in my own house. Every morning I'd head to work like usual, but then I'd sneak back home, super ninja style, and try to catch her doing something. Anything that didn't line up with her whole I can't walk act. I'm talking full-on spy mode. Parking down the street, creeping up the driveway, tiptoeing around like some paranoid James Bond. And every single time, she was there, lying in bed like a damn statue. Not a flinch, not a twitch. Nothing. It was maddening. I started thinking maybe I was the crazy one. But then I started noticing these tiny details. Like, one day, I swear I saw her legs shift a little just as I walked into the room. And another time, she changed positions way too fast when I surprised her. You know that moment when you catch someone doing something they're not supposed to, and they try to cover it up? Yeah, it was exactly like that, but every time I questioned it, she just gave me those sad puppy dog eyes and whispered, "Mark, I'm trying. Trying." Trying my patience is what she was doing. The more I watched, the more my suspicions grew. Was she just too good at pretending? Or was this whole thing a straight-up scam? I couldn't prove anything, but the cracks were starting to show, and it was driving me insane. I was living in a constant state of is she or isn't she? And it wasn't exactly making me a Zen master, if you know what I mean. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't adding up, but without solid proof, what was I supposed to do? Just accuse her of faking it? That could blow up in my face real fast. So I kept watching, waiting for the slip-up that would finally break this whole thing wide open. All right, so here's where everything just imploded. One night, I'm sitting there scrolling through mindless social media when Julia's phone lights up. It's just lying there. Like it's begging me to pick it up. I mean, normally I wouldn't give a damn, but at this point, my brain's working overtime trying to figure out if she's faking or not. So, yeah, I did the unthinkable. I went full-on Sherlock and grabbed her phone. I know, snooping through someone else's phone is like the lowest of the low. But trust me, after everything I'd been through, I deserved some answers. I mean, I'm out here playing Nurse Mark while this whole paralysis thing smells fishier than a seafood buffet. And man, was I right. I start scrolling through her texts, and then bam, there it was. A text thread with her bestie, Sarah. And guess what? Julia's out here plotting like some evil genius in a bad soap opera. Her exact words, LOL, if he thinks I'm letting him go that easily, he's dead wrong. As long as he thinks I'm paralyzed, he's stuck with me forever. Dude. My heart dropped. Like, I actually felt my soul leave my body for a second. This chick was straight up pretending to be paralyzed to trap me. Trap me. I wasn't just angry. I was fuming. You know that white-hot rage where you can't even see straight? Yeah, that was me. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut by Mike Tyson, only instead of a physical hit, it was my sanity that took the blow. My head was spinning. 6 years together. And she pulls this? For what? To keep me around in a marriage that was already on life support? This was some next-level crazy. I mean, seriously, who does that? It was like all the patience, all the guilt I'd been carrying around for weeks, gone, vaporized. I could feel the last bit of my self-restraint just vanish into thin air. She'd been playing me like a fool, and I'd bought it, hard. I was done. No more sympathy, no more playing along with her sick little game. Julia wanted to keep me locked in this twisted circus act. Well, she was about to see just how ugly things could get when the mask comes off. All right, so here's how it went down. After I found those texts, there was no way in hell I was just going to sit there and keep playing the role of her personal butler. I had to confront her. So I got home from work that day, mind racing, and there she was, sitting on the bed like usual, doing her best "I'm so fragile" impression. The air was thick with tension. You know that kind where you can practically feel the explosion brewing. I sat down on the edge of the bed, took a deep breath, and just went for it. "Julia," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "but let's be real." I was one sarcastic remark away from losing it. "Let's cut the crap. I know you can walk." Her reaction? Oh man, it was priceless. She almost dropped her phone, like she'd just seen a ghost or something. Her face went white as a sheet. And for a second, I thought she was about to pass out. But then, oh, then came the fire. You ever see someone go from zero to furious in like 2 seconds flat? Yeah, that was Julia. Her eyes turned into daggers, and she spat out, "You've been spying on me?" I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Spying? Really? You're going to play that card? Come on, Julia. You've been faking this whole thing for weeks. You really thought I wouldn't figure it out? And then, boom, full-blown argument. It was like the gloves came off, and we were right back to our usual shouting matches. Only this time, there was no holding back. She went on, swearing up and down that she couldn't walk, that I was out of my mind. But dude, her face was a dead giveaway. She was pissed that I caught her, but too stubborn to admit it. I wasn't buying a single word of it. "Julia, cut the act. I saw the texts. You think you're going to keep me locked into this marriage by pretending you're paralyzed? Are you serious?" She glared at me, trying to keep the lie alive, but you could see the cracks. She was unraveling, and I wasn't about to let her off easy. The argument dragged on, her clinging to her story like her life depended on it. But I was done playing nice. At this point, it was like watching someone desperately hold on to a sinking ship. She was going down, and she knew it, but she kept pushing, doubling down on the whole "I can't walk" thing. Like, if she said it enough times, I'd just magically forget everything I'd seen and heard. Spoiler, I didn't. All right, so here's where things started to get wild. After that whole screaming match with Julia where she refused to admit anything, I knew I had to step up my game. This wasn't just your average argument anymore. Oh no, this was a full-blown chess match, and I was about to make my move. If she wanted to act like she was paralyzed, I was going to let her, really let her. I'm talking next-level reverse psychology. I decided to go all in on her little performance, but with a twist. Every time she asked for help, I'd do it with the most sarcastic, over-the-top attitude possible. Like, if she wanted to live this fake, helpless life, fine, I'd be her overly helpful personal assistant. "Need help getting to the bathroom? Oh, sure, babe. Let me carry you like the delicate princess you are," I'd say, grinning like a total jerk, picking her up way too slowly, making her feel the weight of every damn second. She'd look at me wide-eyed, knowing exactly what I was doing, but too proud to admit defeat. And I was living for it. I started ramping up these little tests, like, "Oh, you need a glass of water? No problem, I'll get it in 10 minutes. Just gotta finish this episode first." Or, "Hey, you want to move to the couch? I can drag you over there, but I might accidentally drop you. Whoops." I was passive-aggressively giving her every reason to either admit she was lying or get up and walk her very capable legs across the room herself. And guess what? It was working. Slowly but surely, the cracks in her act were starting to show. Every time I laid the sarcasm on thick, I could see her getting more and more frustrated. Her jaw would clench, her eyes would narrow, but she kept playing along, refusing to break character. It was almost impressive how far she was willing to go just to keep this ridiculous charade alive. But I wasn't letting up. Nope. I was in this for the long haul. The best part, she knew I was on to her. I could see it in her eyes. She was starting to figure out that her little game was unraveling. Every time I offered help with that smug grin plastered across my face, she knew. I was calling her bluff, and it was only a matter of time before the whole thing came crashing down. But one thing became crystal clear. She was willing to do whatever it took to keep me locked into this marriage. Like, full-on, I'll fake being paralyzed for life kind of crazy. And the more I watched her try to keep this insane act going, the more determined I became to expose her. This wasn't just about catching her in a lie anymore. It was about winning. and I was ready for the grand finale. All right, so this is when things really went nuclear. After weeks of playing along with Julia's fake paralysis, I knew it was time to blow this whole charade up. No more subtle digs or sarcastic little comments. Nah, this was about to be my masterpiece. I needed to corner her in a way she couldn't escape. And what better place than a crowded restaurant? We're talking Saturday night. Packed house, people everywhere. I purposely chose a spot right in the middle of the room. Prime real estate for maximum humiliation. Julia, of course, rolled in like some tragic queen in her wheelchair, giving me that pitiful look she always used to manipulate everyone around us. But tonight? Tonight was different. I'd been building up to this moment for days, and I was practically vibrating with anticipation. Every glance, every casual smile, I knew she could feel the trap closing in, and she had no idea what was coming. We're sitting there, halfway through dinner, and I casually lean over and drop the bombshell. "Hey, Julia, could you grab that salt from the end of the table?" She looks at me like I just asked her to climb Everest. "Mark, you know I can't reach that," she says, all wide-eyed and innocent. I smirk. "Oh, come on, it's not that far. Just a little stretch. You can do it." Her face goes pale. She's scanning the room now, realizing everyone's watching. The servers, the other tables, everyone had their eyes locked on us. I could practically hear her brain short-circuiting. But I wasn't done. "Here, let me help you," I said, standing up and extending my hand. "You just need to stand up a little." That's when the panic really hit her. Julia's eyes were darting all over the place, like she was searching for an escape route. But there wasn't one. Not this time. She was stuck, and the only way out was to either admit she was faking it, or, well, stand the hell up. "I can't, Mark," she hissed under her breath, still trying to keep up the act. But the crack in her voice told me everything I needed to know. She was cornered, and she knew it. I leaned in close, lowering my voice just enough for only her to hear. "Julia, everyone's watching. Either you get up and grab that salt, or this whole restaurant's about to find out what a liar you are." Her face went from pale to ghost white. She knew she was screwed, and there was no coming back from this. So, with the entire room holding their breath, Julia did the one thing she swore she couldn't do. She stood up. It was like the world stopped spinning for a second. Every single person in that restaurant was staring at her, mouths open, eyes wide. And me? I was loving every damn second of it. She stood there, frozen, realizing her little Oscar-worthy performance had just crumbled in front of everyone. The silence was deafening. And then, just as I predicted, she sat back down, grabbed the salt, and pretended like nothing happened. But it was too late. The damage was done. Her entire act had just collapsed in a matter of seconds, and there was no way to take it back. And me? I just sat there with the biggest grin on my face, knowing I had won. After that epic night at the restaurant, things went from 0 to straight up chaotic. Julia couldn't even look at me without this mix of fury and humiliation smeared all over her face. I mean, let's be real. She knew she'd been exposed, and there was no patching up this mess. The whole "I can't walk" gig was over, and the only thing left was for her to figure out how to crawl out of the wreckage she'd created. But see, I wasn't done. Not even close. The next morning, Julia acted like nothing had happened, but the tension in the air was thicker than a bad horror movie plot. She was trying to pretend that we could just go back to how things were before. Like I didn't just nuke her entire performance in front of a live audience. Cute, right? I let her stew for a bit, watching her try to keep up the normal routine, walking around the house like she hadn't been in a wheelchair for weeks. It was almost funny. But I had something else planned, and this time I was going for the kill shot. See, I had already called a lawyer. While she was busy coming up with her next ridiculous scheme, I was 2 steps ahead. I made sure all my ducks were in a row, divorce papers drafted, assets secured, and a few choice pieces of evidence saved for later, just in case she tried to get smart again. This wasn't just about getting out of the marriage. It was about making sure she never pulled this level of BS on anyone else again. A few days later, I dropped the papers in front of her while she was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee like she was a normal, functional human being. "It's over," I said deadpan. No sarcasm, no jokes this time. Just straight to the point. She looked up at me, her face going through about 12 different emotions in a span of 5 seconds. Confusion, anger, disbelief. "What the hell is this?" she snapped, grabbing the papers like they were poison. "Divorce," I said, crossing my arms and leaning against the counter. "You didn't really think we were going to move on from that little stunt of yours, did you? I mean, come on, Julia. I caught you faking being paralyzed." Paralyzed. What's AIDS? That's not something you just walk off. Pun intended. She went off, of course. Full meltdown mode, screaming about how I was heartless, how I was abandoning her, how I was the worst person on the planet. But guess what? I didn't care, not even a little bit. The more she ranted, the more I knew I was making the right move. But here's the kicker. When she realized that her usual manipulation tactics weren't working, she tried to flip the script one last time. "Fine. You want a divorce? Good luck. But don't think for a second you're walking away with everything. You think you're smart, Mark. We'll see about that." I just smiled, cool as ice. "Julia, I've already talked to a lawyer. I've got everything covered. So go ahead, try something. It'll only make this uglier for you." And that's when she knew she was done. All the fight drained out of her, and for the first time in weeks, she was silent. She wasn't in control anymore, and she hated it. But this was my story now, and I was writing the ending. The papers were signed, the plan was executed, and just like that, I was free. No more fake disabilities, no more mind games, no more drama. The best part, I walked away with everything. Julia was left scrambling, trying to figure out her next move, but it didn't matter. She had nothing left to hold over me, and I made damn sure she wasn't going to pull this kind of stunt on anyone else. And me? I felt like I just dropped the mic on the most insane chapter of my life. It was over, and the best part, I won.